everyone. Welcome to the Survivor Recap. We had a week off, but we're back covering 2 episodes. One thing we want to talk about is a little bit, there was a little bit of some issues in that first week. If you recall in the episode, this was the episode that Shamar was evacuated. He had an injury to his eye, had to go home. The other major thing that happened in that episode was Reynolds had his hidden immunity idol and had to use it. The idol was flushed out, so it was in fair play for anybody else to find. Well, that was a big deal until you watched this week's episode. Yeah. I speak predominantly to a whole little bit with Brandon Hance. Yeah. I have to call it a whole little bit because everything about this episode has left us in confusion. Yeah. There's a lot to be talked about, so this is a Survivor recap, and we're going to go through it bit by bit. This is by far probably the most interesting episode of Survivor I've ever seen. Out of all of the seasons I've watched, and I still am not really quite sure, after watching it twice, what to make of it. You know, I think one thing we looked at is there was a lot that was going on. One thing that happened was it started out with Brandon not being sure if he wanted to be in the game or not. He was angry and really frustrated, thinking about his kids, you know, and here he is, wakes up the next day, suddenly he wants to stick around. Okay, so there's that. We move on, and then we go, and then comes the challenge. This was a little bit of an interesting challenge. The rain stopped for the challenge.
For a change, yeah.
Yeah, it was raining. You know, things were miserable conditions. Finally, they get out on the beach, and it's time to do this great challenge. Basically, you know, well, tell us about it.
Yeah, this challenge was definitely a strength challenge. The favorite side put Brandon and Philip down to hold the ropes for the nets. Malcolm tossing for the favorites. Great. I mean, he's a great tosser. Great strategy there.
Brenda also.
So it was a great strategy there. You know, they win the challenge. And
what happens though along the way?
Yeah, what happens though first is that Brandon drops his net of rocks that
or coconuts. Coconuts, right?
And Philip was able to hold on and beat the fans. And that is something that we'll talk about a little bit more.
Well, that leads into the next thing. Basically, what happens here is Philip won. I mean, Brandon let go. So it came down to Philip's strength, or I guess you could also say the lack of strength on the side of the fans. There's a lot to be said about that. Yeah. But basically what happened is you came back to camp and you saw Brandon sitting there. He's cooking all the meat for the tribe, and you got Philip, on the other hand, bragging it up. Yeah. Nick, I want to talk a little bit about that. Is it Philip's right to brag for victory?
I understand the self-confidence. You know, you have to have self-confidence in this game. And, you know, you see it a lot in sports outside of this. But with Survivor, I don't think there is a way that you can brag. I don't think it's a team sport. Everybody was involved. I mean, because you won challenges against the fans, you did have to sit out 3 people. But everybody that was involved helped win that game. Yes, he was the last survivor standing and at the end of that challenge, but I don't know if that really gives him a right to brag.
Is he a beast in the challenges?
I was excited.
Real quick, yes or no?
Yes.
Is he a beast?
Yes.
He has a little bit of a history so far in the season of winning challenges. So, you know, yes, it is a team effort, but yes, maybe he does have a little bit of right. I don't know, Nick. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but it almost doesn't matter because what happens next basically washes away everything. Puts a clean slate for both Brandon and for both Shep. You're probably wondering why we're talking about Brandon. That's because a little bit of an argument went down between the two. Basically, Brandon had had enough of all of Shep's bragging, and Shep had made a comment to Brenda, and Brandon stood up for her. What happened, Nick? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, they were wondering if they should take apart or to do some work on camp.
Something with the
tarp or something.
Right.
We weren't not really sure on what was actually supposed to happen, and Philip kind of gets a little bit irritated with her about asking it, and gets a little bit snippy. And you know, Brandon says, you know, she was just making a suggestion, Philip.
But is that all he said? Let's look. How did things escalate? Tell us about what happened next, and Where did Brandon go, or where did they go wrong in this conversation? Where did it go from a conversation to an argument?
Well, where it went from a conversation to an argument was because Philip says, I'm trying to save my energy for challenges. And I think that's when Brandon was like, oh, here he goes again with the challenges and how he's always winning the challenges. And I think that's what kind of sparked this first conflict.
And basically it ended with Brandon saying, just shutting down and saying, look, shut up, I'm done with you.
Right.
Philip goes off. Now Philip is upset. Brandon's back at camp pouting. I think he's like, we saw a video of him like killing ants. That was weird. I'm not sure what that was all about. But what does he say to his tribe mates? He says, should I go apologize? They said, no, let him cool off. Well, what happens is Philip goes off and starts talking to his other tribe members. One of them was Andrea Belke, here from UW Stevens Point. The reason we're doing this segment, she gets really nervous because Philip throws out the idea of throwing a challenge.
Yeah.
What do you think? At this point in the game, looking up to it, is it ever a good idea to throw a challenge really quick?
No, it's not. It's never a good idea to throw a challenge because all you're going to do is you're down a player and you're causing issues because if somebody like Brandon finds out that they're going to throw the challenge to kick him off, boom, it's a reason to go off. And I don't think it's a good strategic move to throw a challenge ever.
And I think we picked up on that. Andrea was very upset about it, and of course she was a little bit too revealing with Brandon. Brandon caught on to the idea, so he goes and talks to Shep, and he says to Shep, "Hey, look, I'm here. I thought we had talked this out. At one point earlier, we had seen them both apologize to each other, or at least Brandon apologized to Shep. Yeah. He accepted it, and he said, look, what's the deal? And the other thing he brought up was some of the flaws with Stealth R Us. Now, with Stealth R Us, basically what happened is you've had basically names for each figure in the machine to essentially roll over other survivors. Well, here we go, and Brandon starts going off on him, and he essentially starts bashing Shep.
Right.
Starts saying, look, people don't like you out here. Look, you are causing problems. And they're not saying it to you, but they are. So all of a sudden, Shep goes set off. Another argument begins. It's part 2. Yay. So what happens? Well, we see a lot of things. We see Brandon do what, Nick?
Something that's, I think, absolutely ridiculous. And you can't throw away food,
Yeah. Brandon went ahead and started dumping all of the food on the ground, which, by the way, at this point is still, or at least looked, still very moist from the rainstorm.
From the rain. Yeah.
So dumps it all out, and you have this issue of the tribe trying to react to it. If you're trying to survive and you see somebody dumping the food, what would you do? You'd probably try to stop them, right?
Well, I was thinking about this a lot because how angry he is, I think the tribe did the right thing.
Okay, and one thing we really didn't see is, we didn't get a good angle of how this all went down. The camera people were sort of chasing him.
Right.
So we got a shot of Corinne's reaction, and he comes charging in, and once he starts doing it, we don't see the players move.
Right.
We do know that they're in the camp. We do know that they have the fire situated in their shelter, so it might be kind of difficult for them to get out, but they really didn't.
Right.
So, I mean,
I understand
he looked angry.
Right.
But was it also just a case where maybe they just couldn't really get out? I mean...
Yeah, that could definitely be a challenge to try to get out and try to stop him because he was gung-ho to do this. I mean, we've been hearing about this for about 3 weeks now, and it just seemed like he just wanted to do it, and some of the tribe members were able to actually get out to try to stop him from dumping the beans on the ground. And Eric tried, and he kind of steps back, and I understand that because I don't know what he's going to do next. Is he going to throw the vase at me? You don't know, and I think they handled it well. I mean, all you can say is, hey, don't do that, don't, Brandon, don't, and I don't know. I think they handled it well to their situation, in the situation. Would I have done that? I don't know.
It's hard to say. They stayed away from being violent, and I think that's really important. But, we don't also know what's going on behind the scenes.
Right.
I mean, I can tell you, I would have wanted to tackle him. But we don't know the rules with Survivor. If there is something saying you can't really, I mean, that you're limited on what you can do, I would like to see what Survivor would have done if he would have started decking people. I don't know. It's really weird. But, well, that's what happened. And Brandon, it turned out, would have to pay the price for his actions. We're going to discuss that in part 2 of this segment. This has been the Survivor Recap. Check out the next video right here on our YouTube page. Stay with us. Thanks.